Imagine living in the 1600s and having your face painted by Rembrandt. You wouldn't just get a portrait, you'd get a cinematic universe. Forget soft lighting and polite poses. This guy made your wrinkles look like battle scars. Your hands look like they'd written manifestos. And your eyes? They'd pierce centuries. Rembrandt van Rijn wasn't just painting people, he was directing them. He invented drama before HBO. While other artists painted royalty looking stiff as mannequins, Rembrandt painted surgeons elbow-deep in cadavers, soldiers looking like they just paused a fistfight, and himself, over and over, as if daring the world to watch him crumble in real time. If Caravaggio was art's bad boy of shadow, Rembrandt was the Netflix binge. Long-running, dark, addictive, brutally human. Rembrandt Harmenzoon van Rijn. Yeah, that's a mouthful. So let's just stick with Rembrandt. Was born in Leiden in 1606, the son of a miller. Not exactly royalty, but he wasn't starving either. His family wanted him to go to university, maybe become a respectable lawyer or priest. Instead, baby Rembrandt saw some paint, saw some shadows, and decided, nah, I'm going to immortalize people looking dramatic as hell. He trained locally, but it didn't take long before his brushstrokes caught attention. By his early 20s, he was already a rising star in Amsterdam, the bustling trade capital where everyone wanted their portrait painted to flex their wealth. And Rembrandt? He delivered, not with generic pretty boy portraits, but with intensity. He made you look like you carried secrets, debts, sins. He didn't paint your bank account. He painted your soul. His breakout hit was The Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Nicolaas Tulp, 1632. Imagine a group of surgeons standing around a corpse, learning anatomy like it's a TED Talk. That painting launched him from talented kid to art world sensation. Suddenly, Rembrandt was the guy you called if you wanted your portrait to scream gravitas. From there, he built his reputation fast. His house became an art factory, filled with students, apprentices, and commissions rolling in. He married Saskia van Eilenberg, the cousin of a wealthy art dealer, which was basically marrying into the influencer network of the 1600s. Money, fame, success, the glow-up was real. Rembrandt had entered his golden era, and like all golden eras, the universe was already sharpening its knives. If Rembrandt had a superpower, it wasn't painting lace collars or gold chains, though he could do that too. His real flex was light. He took chiaroscuro, the dramatic play of light and dark, and pushed it like a Marvel origin story. His canvases weren't just pictures. They were stage plays where a single candle could expose your soul. Then came his magnum opus, The Night Watch, 1642. First, fun fact, it wasn't actually at night. Over time, varnish and dust darkened it, so everyone thought it was a midnight crime scene. In reality, it was a daytime militia portrait. But Rembrandt made it look like a squad of Avengers assembling in shadow. The muskets, the captain pointing forward, the little girl glowing like a ghost. It wasn't just a portrait, it was an action movie poster, centuries before Photoshop. Of course, critics at the time weren't all clapping. Some patrons were like, bro, I paid for my face to be front and center. Why am I half in shadow while that random kid is glowing? But that's the thing. Rembrandt didn't care about flattery. He cared about drama. He wanted his paintings to move, to live, to feel like they'd leap off the wall and follow you home. His style wasn't about pretty. It was about truth. Wrinkles, warts, greasy hair, double chins, all lit like they belonged on Broadway. If Vermeer was painting quiet poetry, Rembrandt was directing Game of Thrones. The Night Watch cemented his legend as the master of drama on canvas. But behind the brushstrokes, the cracks were already starting to form. And the shadows weren't just on the canvas anymore. For a while, Rembrandt had it all. Fame, money, commissions, a bustling studio, and Saskia, his wife, muse, and anchor. But the 1600s didn't do happy endings. One by one, the children he and Saskia had together died young. Then Saskia herself died of illness at just 29. For Rembrandt, it was like the lights went out. He kept painting, of course. Art was his only therapy, but grief carved its lines deep. And as if fate thought, You know what would make this worse? Financial ruin. The money started drying up. Here's the thing. Rembrandt wasn't great with cash. He lived like an art world rock star, buying exotic props, costumes, antiques, and, no joke, a pet menagerie that included a peacock and a monkey. But commissions slowed down. His dramatic style wasn't always what rich patrons wanted. They wanted polished. He gave them raw. By the 1650s, he was broke. So broke that his mansion and most of his possessions were auctioned off. Imagine selling your own masterpieces and your cool collector's items just to pay off creditors. That was Rembrandt. Once the golden boy, now humbled and hustling for survival. He moved into smaller quarters with Hendrikia Stoffels, his former housekeeper turned partner, and Titus, his surviving son. Even then, scandal followed. The church labeled Hendrikia a sinner for living in sin with him. Jobs got scarcer. The genius who painted the Night Watch was now dodging debt collectors. But here's the twist. This decline didn't kill his art. It fueled it. The later Rembrandt works, the ones painted while he was broke, grieving, and shamed, are some of the rawest, most brutally honest canvases ever made. If you think selfies are a modern obsession, Rembrandt would like a word. The man painted over 80 self-portraits, more than any other major artist of his era. But unlike Instagram influencers curating their best angles, Rembrandt painted himself with ruthless honesty. Early on, you see him flexing, wearing fancy hats, rich fabrics, striking confident poses, the art world equivalent of a thirst trap. But as time rolled on and the money dried up, the friends disappeared, and the wrinkles set in, his portraits changed. He showed himself tired, weathered, sagging, eyes heavy with grief and debt. No filters, no retouching, just raw humanity. By the end, his self-portraits weren't even about him anymore. They were about being human. He painted himself like a universal stand-in for all our struggles: pride, loss, regret, resilience. You can look at a late Rembrandt portrait today and think, yeah, same buddy. Life's rough. In a world that wanted polished, Rembrandt gave us truth. And that's why his self-portraits still punch harder than 1,000 perfectly lit selfies. They're not images, they're mirrors. By the 1660s, Rembrandt was a ghost of his former self in the art world. Once the golden boy of Amsterdam, he was now mostly ignored. His style, too raw and too real, had fallen out of fashion. Wealthy patrons wanted polished perfection. Rembrandt gave them cracked skin, tired eyes, and uncomfortable truths. Spoiler, that doesn't sell well at dinner parties. The blows kept coming. Hendrikia, the partner who stood by him after Saskia's death, passed away. His son, Titus, his last surviving child, also died young. By the time Rembrandt himself died in 1669, he was alone, buried in an unmarked grave. No lavish funerals, no public mourning, just a quiet exit for a man who once lit up canvases with fire. It was a fade into shadows, so stark it felt like one of his own paintings. The genius who gave the world the Night Watch, who immortalized humanity in every wrinkle and scar, was left uncelebrated in his final days. And yet, like all true legends, the story didn't end there. For a while after his death, Rembrandt was basically a cautionary tale. Don't blow your fortune on costumes and monkeys, kids. His work gathered dust, his name slipped into the shadows, and other, trendier painters took the spotlight. But here's the thing about truth. It doesn't stay buried. Over time, the art world realized that Rembrandt wasn't just painting faces. He was painting humanity itself. His portraits weren't about status. They were about the cracks, the flaws, the pain, and the resilience that make us real. Today, the Night Watch pulls crowds like a blockbuster premiere in Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum. His self-portraits hang in museums across the globe, confronting visitors with the same raw honesty he gave himself centuries ago. And critics now call him what he always was, one of the greatest painters who ever lived. If Monet was the chaser of light, and Van Gogh detonated color, then Rembrandt was the master of shadow. Not the darkness that hides, but the darkness that reveals. He showed us that a single flicker of light on a weary face can say more about the human condition than 1,000 words. Rembrandt's story is proof that fame fades, money crumbles, but honesty, brutal, unflinching honesty, lasts forever. Rembrandt didn't just capture what people looked like, he captured who we are. And that's why, centuries later, we're still staring back at him.